Oh my God, the bottom's falling out. July 30th, 2019. It is the Barney and Clyde podcast, episode 11, and the brief rundown of this evening's proceedings under our Bad Ideas That Will Not Die segment. The minimum wage. We're going to talk about Bernie Sanders cutting his campaign staff hours back so as to be able to pay $15 an hour, plus Rashida Tlaib's calling for $20 an hour as a federal minimum wage. On the fine line between caring and grandstanding, we're going to look at a few things. We're Jon Stewart versus Rand Paul with regard to 9/11 first responder compensation, the push to ban vaping, and Senator Hawley's bill to put government controls on social media. Because we don't have enough powers of judgment and self-control to know how much social media we should be taking in ourselves. Anyway, and then on our You'll Never Be Woke Again segment, Miriam Ben Shalom gets banned from Facebook for 30 days for saying that she she's a lesbian. She wants to have her romances with actual women, and as she got banned from 30 days from Facebook for saying so, which points up a point of tension between the lesbian community and the transgender community. So at least all those things, oftentimes a number of other things get folded into the mix.
Yeah, we'll discuss all matters of the weighty matters of the day, as Barney puts it.
You bet. It is the Barney and Clyde podcast, episode 11.
Episode 11. I'm the libertarian. Barney is the conservative. We have a Venn diagram that has a lot of convergence area, but some divergence area as well. Mm-hmm. But as we have discussed before, one thing we don't diverge on are delicious beverages.
Absolutely.
So what do we got here today, Barney?
Well, just a good old vodka tonic. I generally don't buy a fancy brand of vodka because vodka is one of those things that less fancy brands taste pretty darn good too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I like the all-potato vodka, the Monopolova. It's like less than $20 a bottle.
Okay. Yeah, so you pour yourself something bracing and pull up a chair and join us for the next hour. And
have a toast.
Yes. The Barney and Clyde Show, delivered fortnightly and forthrightly. And so we've got a number of matters to get into today.
Yeah, so you want to start with the minimum wage?
Bad ideas that will not die. This is one that we've discussed before. And I'd like to set the table by going over my 3 principal reasons why the minimum wage is a bad and wrong idea.
Okay.
There are at least 3, and they are these. 1, and I think this is probably supremely important, it's government telling a private organization how to conduct its affairs.
And a private individual what price they must sell their labor at.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Sorry for
your
sense.
Because the old Uncle Barnes' first rule of economics is that a good or service is worth what buyer and seller agree that it's worth. Period. No other entity has any business being involved in that. Certainly not government.
Labor is no different.
Yes. Okay, which leads us to reason number 2. It distorts the market value of an hour's worth of labor. How do we know what stocking shelves in a given workplace is worth if government is insisting that you pay a certain amount for it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then item 3, which one kind of leads to the other in these. Item 3, it elbows out the most economically vulnerable among us, principally minority youth without much work experience, out of the labor market.
And therefore out of the first rung on the ladder.
You bet.
Up to success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that is why, but it's the bad idea that won't die.
Yeah. So let's could we unpack that a little bit, because to play devil's advocate, the left-leaning person, full of care and compassion, and probably legitimately so, would say, but Barney, that's not a living wage. Whatever the minimum wage is today, so $7.15 an hour, something like that, $7.25. That's not a living wage. You can't support a family on that.
2 things about that. One, an employer has no obligation to tailor the givens of a job description of what his organization needs, what function it needs performed for those who need to support a family. Mm-hmm. Once again, Adam Smith's invisible hand. Those who need to support a family are going to gravitate to something. The freedom still lies with,
as I like to say, Adam Smith's idea of the invisible hand, but those are very, very visible hands. Millions and millions and millions of very visible hands moving the economy.
Yeah. And the applicant for a given job is free to say that's not going to meet my needs, and I'm going to have to take a pass and keep looking.
That's right.
You bet.
And that job might be perfect for somebody. It might, like you said, it might be a person who's in their youth, who's just getting started. Yeah. And the statistics say that that's minority youth most often.
You bet.
And if we're looking at people getting their first introduction into workplace and the marketplace and selling their labor and getting management experience and all that rising to the top, that first rung on the ladder is very important.
Absolutely. And the other side of the coin is, yes, that an employer is going to have to, if an employer does decide to take heed of this moral obligation thing that our hypothetical leftist would be talking about, they're going to have to cut costs somewhere or raise prices.
Yeah.
And
the biggest cost to any business is labor.
Yeah.
I think in 99% of cases.
Sure.
And labor is not just expensive because the business is paying directly to the person who's employed. They're paying for insurance for that person. They're paying for insurance for that person. They're paying for taxes for that person. They're paying maybe some types of benefits for that person. They're paying workers' comp and all that kind of stuff. Bet. So it costs businesses often half again what the labor expense is just to keep somebody employed. Which
this is being played out in the political realm.
I love this.
Bernie Sanders, who proudly calls himself a socialist and has been, is a huge advocate of minimum wage. He's agreed to pay his campaign staff $15 an hour minimum wage after some unionized staff members were causing a fuss about it.
They were salaried employees, right? And they said, well, if we take into account all the hours we work, we're working out to like $12, $13 an hour, something like that. So we want the 15.
Yeah, he's doing that. He's cutting back their hours.
So they cut their hours.
Yeah. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Here's what I can pay you, people. You want me to bump up your wage and bump your hours, or are we going to go vice versa?
This, to me, is like a delicious piece of chocolate.
Yeah.
Like, it just tastes so good. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just the fact that he learned, and the guy has had like 60 years to learn economics 101 and hasn't.
Right.
So the fact that he's displaying them, regardless of whether he absorbs the lesson or not, he's displaying economics 101 to the world in clear form, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. The development comes days after the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office concluded that a proposed $15 federal minimum wage, which the House passed, didn't it?
Yeah, House passed it.
Thank goodness the Senate won't. But anyway, a $15 federal minimum wage would result in 3.7 million people becoming unemployed. And then dig this: in 1987, the New York Times
of all
yes published a editorial, the title of which was "The Right Minimum Wage, $0."
Yeah,
and if a higher minimum wage means fewer jobs, why does it remain on the agenda of some liberals? A higher minimum wage would undoubtedly raise the living standard of the majority of low-wage workers who could keep their jobs. The gain, it is argued, would justify the sacrifice of the minority who would become unemployable. The argument isn't convincing. Those at risk from a higher minimum wage would be young, poor workers who already face formidable barriers to getting and keeping jobs. And now we've got Rashida Tlaib calling for a $20 minimum wage.
My favorite thing about that is, well, they already have proposed in New York City a $30 minimum wage. But my favorite part of this tirade of hers was that I can't allow, this is a quote, I can't allow people to work for tips. What damn business is yours?
I know.
What do I work for? And honestly, like, I'm speaking as someone who waited tables and tended bar for about a decade.
Yeah.
And I could make $20 an hour pretty easily a lot of the times. I worked at one restaurant where I had to split tips between everybody. I had to tip the busser, I had to tip the bartender, I had to tip everybody, and I still made about $15 an hour. I worked at bars, attending bar, where I made well over $20 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, if we got a $20 minimum wage, I can't allow people to work for tips. They're going to cut people's salaries. Salary's a bad word, but you know what I mean?
Right.
People's real income is going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're working for $20, $25 an hour for tips, and it's inconsistent, and you're trying to raise a family on that, any impact to that is going to be really devastating.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. Do you feel like you have enough of a pulse on where the nation's where our collective mindset is headed as an American people? These things do get shot down most of the time now, or once in a while some city, Seattle or San Francisco, will institute a minimum wage and quickly find out what a bad deal it is. And, are we? Will a sufficient critical mass of this nation continue to understand that minimum wage is not an economic boon, no matter how fair it looks on the surface?
Never. As Milton Friedman said, we need to set it, index it to inflation, and then forget about it. Because the populace is never going to examine the economic undergirders of anything.
It's their freedom we're talking about, though.
It
back to this buyer and seller of a good or service. It is their ability to negotiate as applicants for jobs.
But we become a society that... Well, we became a society that only read the headlines, right?
Yeah.
And we're quickly becoming a society that only reads the memes, right?
Yes.
So the people do not have the full context of the implications of any proposed set of policies. You know what I mean? And I think that'll go segue well into the Jon Stewart thing. But I don't know if you're ready to go there yet.
Well, just as I often say in these situations. For my money, a lot of this stuff has a spiritual implication as well. Human beings give up a little bit of their humanity when they give up the range of choices that they're permitted to make. When they willingly give that up, they become a little more like cattle that just want their daily gruel and then be shown where the corral is to the pen.
Right. And some people are content with that, and a lot of people aren't content with that, and I think the people who want to rise up the ladder will do that unless you put roadblocks like this in front of them. And again, going back to minimum wage is I don't think well, let me rephrase that. It's really easy to think that you and me talking about economics and talking about the minimum wage, what a bad idea it is. Someone on the outside who's caring about people and wants people to make a living wage and prosper
do well,
and support their families.
Right.
I'd say, oh God, you guys are evil. You don't want people to make a living wage. No, we want people to make a living wage, and we see this as an impediment to it because the evidence bears that out. And it's not just the fact that there's you can't just put a dollar amount and say people need to make $15 an hour. That's an arbitrary marker, because when they make $15 an hour and that's enforced, all the costs of all the goods that they rely on is going to go up because the people producing them now make more money, and the cost of producing that stuff increases. Okay, now there's going to be an economic offset as people have more money doing those jobs, but the overall result is typically negative. So the question is, how far does your money spend? How strong is the dollar? How much can you get for it? Not how many of them you have, because you can easily have $30 an hour, as New York City is proposing, but if a McDonald's hamburger costs you that $30, you're not winning. You've gone in a negative direction.
Yeah. It just turns pennies into dimes. That's and right. Dimes into dollars. And
Yep.
Yeah, it's an inflationary tactic, actually.
It is. And inflation is the real tax.
Okay.
I think.
Well, and the the next segment we have here is the fine line between caring and grandstanding. And we've talked about this before. Remember one or two episodes ago, we talked about the Wayfair furniture people walking off the job because they didn't want their employer to fulfill a contract with a detention center on the border and send them beds. Which they care so much they don't want to see the people in those detention centers have a more comfortable night's sleep.
Yeah, and we got some responses back on the Facebook page.
Okay.
That I saw you had a meaningful conversation on there.
Yeah.
When we do our mailbag episode, we should
yes,
drag that up.
we'll be doing a mailbag episode one of these days. But we got another one today. Jon Stewart, who when he first started out was a really funny guy. And he had, of course, the Daily Show on Comedy Central, a cable channel. And but like so many people in the funny man business, he wanted to prove to himself and society at large that he had some gravitas, that he thought more broadly than just making people laugh, and that he had things he was passionate about, and which makes for real unfunny comedy, and a number of late night guys have gone that route, and now he's just become. He is got a position such in our society that he can testify before congressional committees, and they sit there and here's this TV funny man.
Which just shows you can buy your way into Congress.
You bet.
You know?
And he appeared before, what committee was it where he brought the 9/11 first responders? There's still a number of them that are around. I mean, that was 18 years ago, and so
sure. And no one, to preface it, he's going to come into Congress to this committee and blast everybody, and tell everybody off because I guess they have to listen. But he just gets it wrong on so many levels. And what I'm really getting sick of are actors coming in and hamming it up and having a little tear in their eye, little crocodile tears in their eye. Jimmy Kimmel and Jon Stewart, and you know what? I like both those guys. They're very funny, and they get it right a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But like, just spare me your fake tears.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If you really care about these people, you will examine the facts, and then you will make a plan. You will urge a plan based on the facts. But before we get too bogged down in that, do you want to hear the clip?
Absolutely, yes. Here's Jon Stewart.
Take a listen to the clip.
Testifying in front of the committee.
Behind me, a filled room of 9/11 first responders. And in front of me, a nearly empty Congress. Sick and dying, they brought themselves down here to speak. To no one. Shameful. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it is a stain on this institution. You should be ashamed of yourselves for those that aren't here, but you won't be. Because accountability doesn't appear to be something that occurs in this chamber. Your indifference costs these men and women their most valuable commodity, time. It's the one thing they're running out of. This should be flipped. This hearing should be flipped. These men and women should be up on that stage, and Congress should be down here answering their questions as to why this is so damn hard and takes so damn long. And the idea that you can only give them 5 more years of the VCF because you're not quite sure what's going to happen 5 years from now. Well, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure what's going to happen 5 years from now. More of these men and women are going to get sick, and they are going to die.
Normally, I would agree with Stewart.
Okay.
Because, what the hell are you guys doing up there, screwing things up again? This giant government bureaucracy, you're incapable of delivering services to people, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's an argument that's strange to you and I.
No.
But he comes in and says, look at this empty room. Look how few of you showed up. Shame on you. It's like you're wagging your finger at the people who did show up.
Yeah.
And saying, shame on you for not showing up.
I got a question.
Sure.
If this is an appropriate time to raise it.
Yeah, bring it on.
Didn't our government rise to the occasion right away and start? Haven't these people been getting some federal assistance?
They have been getting some.
Okay.
I do not know the adequacy level of it. I don't know what the federal obligation is for that. I think that there's not a federal obligation. An accident occurs in a state, in a city, in a municipality. I don't know that the federal government's obligated to do anything. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't do something.
Right, kind of like disaster relief for hurricane areas.
Right, it's like they've got to. Maybe there's not a precedent for it. They've got to make that happen. That's why the law is in question. So, Stewart calls out Rand Paul because
Republican senator
from Kentucky, Rand Paul,
ophthalmologist by training.
Yes, who voted against the bill, basically because it was completely wide open as far as funding and scope.
Is it this bill that ensures funding through the year 2090? Not going to be any 9/11 first responders still alive in the year 2090. Are we talking about setting up their grandchildren? Of course, those first responders demonstrated courage and compassion toward their fellow human beings that it's extraordinary, and they should be
people saying that they aren't,
a gesture to make sure they're taken care of medically and all that good stuff is. But 2090, what? Anyway.
Okay.
Plus, back to Rand Paul. He raises the question, and I think we'll get it.
Yeah.
When
So
you do your sound clip.
we will.
He raises. He points up an important thing to consider, which is how to do this without adding to our debt and deficit.
Yes.
Are you, Rand Paul, saying you will not vote for this? You will not vote for this measure?
I don't vote for any spending that's not offset. I didn't vote for the border spending recently, even though I support more money for the border, because the responsible thing to do is to take that money from somewhere else in the budget. So I have consistently voted against spending bills if they are not budgetarily neutral, and if we don't expand the deficit. I won't vote for it. We have a $22 trillion debt. We're borrowing more than almost $2 million every minute, and I've consistently sounded that theme. And what is really disgusting is people like Jon Stewart lie to the American public. People like Kirsten Gillibrand lie to the American public. I have been absolutely consistent from the get-go. I have forced like 4 or 5 votes this year on having offset spending cuts to new spending. I lose every time because Republicans and Democrats are terrible.
If you stick to that, and it might be perfectly budgetarily narrable, but it's $10.2 billion over a decade. You've already said that if it is not paid for, they don't find some way to pay for that money, then you would not support this measure, right?
But it's worse than that, Neil. It's not $10.2 billion over 10 years. It's about $2 billion a year every year until 2092. There is no limit. This is the thing. This bill is completely irresponsible. You know what it says for how much money we're going to spend? Such sums as are necessary. So if Jon Stewart could read, maybe he'd read the bill and say, oh my God, who in the right mind would vote for a bill that doesn't have a dollar amount in it? It has no dollar amount.
But there's no way of knowing, right? Isn't that part of the problem? Because there was no way to forecast these illnesses and sicknesses that came as a result.
We do this on disasters too. So we just make up an enormous number. What you would do if you're responsible is you'd allocate it for 3, 4, 5 years and come back and reassess it. That's a responsible way to budget. But to have an open-ended thing that goes to 2092, really? We're going to have a spending bill that says you spend whatever you want until 2092. It doesn't matter how good the cause is. It's irresponsible. And really, people need to wake up and not be so sort of overwhelmed by celebrity that they take out-and-out falsehoods and ad hominem attacks from really a gutter snipe like Jon Stewart.
Oh, excellent. One of the most important things I've heard a national legislator say in a long time. Yeah.
I think so too. I think that we are letting celebrities get away with far too much political influence. If we're talking about how Facebook and YouTube and Google and Twitter and all these giant companies influence public opinion. I think it's really important that we look at the way celebrities do the same thing. I'm not proposing any legislation that would silence them.
No, let's please no more legislation.
I wish they would just read the damn legislation. We can't even get the legislators to read the damn legislation. I wish the people who were protesting the legislation would at least read it.
Well, yeah, and then this goes back decades. I remember in the 1980s, Sissy Spacek appeared before some congressional committee because she'd played a farmer's wife in some movie, and she was talking about the need to support family farms and. Which, by the way, I mean, that's another example of what we're talking about. This business of this bill going out through 2092. The Farm Bill, which is something that ask any farmer, and I do some agricultural journalism. I talk to them from that always. Well, the Farm Bill will be coming up for discussion again in about a year in Congress. It's a cyclical thing. It's 5 years and 5-year increments, and it goes back to 1933 when this country was in the depths of the Depression, and our Congress decided to do something for them. Most of it was ill-advised, supporting, subsidizing dairy prices and federal crop insurance, which is not anything like actual private sector insurance, but a number of those things. But they did that, and it kind of, at least short-term, helped farmers. Come 1938, we were still feeling the effects of the Depression, so they revisited it. And that set a precedent. It became a 5-year cycle, and now farmers and legislators and lobbyists from all kinds of industries that feed into the agriculture industry expect it. And what are we going to? We got to be gearing up for the next 5-year cycle of the Farm Bill. Right. The Farm Bill.
Right.
Why do we still got a Farm Bill?
Why do we still have a Farm Bill?
Which is distorting the market value of the price of a gallon of milk,
right?
Yeah,
which honestly allows these giant mega companies, these big ad companies, to exist, and makes it very, very hard for actual family farms to exist.
You bet. Yeah,
there's an argument to be made that it also keeps food prices very low because the production can be done at such a low cost, but that comes at the subsidies, the cost of the subsidies, and all that kind of stuff.
Anything we do, healthcare or agriculture, or what was the one we were talking about a while ago, minimum wage, anything like that. Yes, there's going to be a little period if we were to return to a free market footing on these things, where everybody's going to kind of look like, oh my God, the bottom's falling out. No, before too long, we'd all see what the market price for something was, and the market price for anything else that emanates out from there. Yeah.
It's every economic, the economy. It's not. It's an ecosystem, is what it is.
Yes.
Everything touches 100 other things. You know what I mean? Everything you do has not just a reaction, not just a next step. It has hundreds of next steps.
Yes.
I mean, they're on a micro scale sometimes, but people think of these economic actions as I'm going to pull this lever and I'm going to get this result, and boom, 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 I'm done.
Yeah.
That was actually too many booms. Just boom, I'm done. But they forget about what that touches, what that touches, what that touches, and how it spans out through the entire ecosystem.
It also does not take into account economic evolution, human ingenuity, where people are constantly thinking of more efficient ways to do things, or a new product that supersedes the old one, cars replacing horses and buggies and all that good stuff, and that's always happening as well. These schemes don't take that into account.
Yeah, and I think that when you're looking at the fine line between caring and grandstanding, I think that there's a lot of people who, like we said, don't dive into the real result of the policies that they're making. And I think a prime example of that is vaping.
Yes. We've got that in our Now, yeah, we're just about to get there.
Yeah, I was trying to segue into it smoothly, Bart.
Yeah, and I wasn't being much help, was I? But I just want to, just before we segue, I just want to say that caring's an interesting thing. I mean, obviously, yes, we are born with human hearts. As a matter of fact, I come at it from a spiritual angle. We are all supposed to be agents of grace and reflect Christ, but whatever model you use for that, to care is an obviously a good thing. But caring can be, just like anything else in this world, lead to unsavory developments. Caring can become a source of self-congratulation, and I care so much. And you get a little of that with Jon Stewart and that, and advocates for the minimum wage. And I care. Aren't I great because I care? You really ought to think well of me because I care. Yeah. And
and that's not just on the left.
No, there's some of that. And we're going to get, after vaping, we're going to talk about a Republican's bill that's going through Congress. And
let's keep talking about vaping, because we're going to talk about some Republicans' hands in that mess too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Vaping. I guess everybody knows what we mean by vaping. E-cigarettes, cigarettes where the all the flavor and the nicotine that gives you that satisfaction.
Right?
And there are different brands and ways that they're.
So instead of smoking,
yes,
you have a cartridge that has liquid in it.
Yeah,
and that liquid can be flavored and it can have additives. The additives could be nicotine. They could be just flavors.
Yeah.
So it could be nicotine free.
Sure.
It could be any number of things. In fact, they even put THC, the active ingredient that makes you high from marijuana, in those things. And I think that's the real problem that people have with this, is it's too easy for people to get away with smoking dope.
Yeah.
And they can't, get their tax and their fine money.
Right.
But anyway, so instead of smoking it, you infuse it into this liquid, and then the pen or the vape stick or whatever, it heats the liquid, turns it into vapor, and you inhale the vapor. If it's not healthy for you, but it's significantly less dangerous.
It's not going to give you
cigarettes.
cancer like a cigarette would.
It could, but it's. I don't know the numbers, but it's significantly less harmful than cigarettes.
I got some data we'll get into a little later.
Okay.
But it's significantly less, and it is such a great step in the direction of getting this country off cigarettes. And everybody knows that people who smoke cigarettes generally started their habit around 13, 14, 15 years old. My grandfather did. My dad did.
I did.
I actually waited until I was 17, my senior year in high school. You never hear of people starting a cigarette habit at age 30 or 40 or 50. No. Right. The alarm in the kids across the country are going to do this instead of smoking, and it might lead them to smoking. But it's far better than having them go out and buy a pack of Marlboros.
Yeah.
Anyway, local angle, and I think you got a local angle on this too. But I think longtime viewers of this show know that my day gig, I'm a freelance journalist, and one of the things I do is cover local government for a local media company. Their website, I've read up stories about local government meetings, and I was at city council, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago, and they got their business out of the way pretty quickly, and then the mayor said, well, I think we have a presentation from some folks at Healthy Community Initiatives, which, oh boy, this may get me in trouble, I don't know, but Healthy Community Initiatives, I suppose they do some good things, don't all these outfits, but as a matter of fact, Healthy Community Initiatives came up in the only article of mine that I ever, was ever published at the American Thinker. Back in, I think I've shared that with you, haven't I? I wrote about having one day picked up the local paper and seen that Healthy Community Initiatives was involved in a program that came to the attention of the national or the Federal Department of Health, and our city got all kinds of kudos for it. But then this was right after Barack Obama and the Democrats in Congress in like 2010, I think it was. Started into their stimulus stuff, and so this was some stimulus money going for this, and it was going to be eat your broccoli posters in preschool centers and nutritional consulting and stuff like that. We were going to spend money that we really didn't have then. We already had a debt and deficit problem of gargantuan proportions. But this stimulus had to be done, and part of it was this. So anyway, healthy community, they're big into making sure everybody's nice and healthy. And so the two people from Healthy Community Initiatives sat there and briefed the city council on. Did you know that parents, if a child's vaping device has been confiscated, the parents can retrieve it after school hours? Isn't that just awful?
Isn't it awful?
Their own property? They can get it back?
Someone can get their own property back.
And
it's terrible.
And plus, do you want to do...
Putting up their...
that was a PowerPoint slide that they showed at this meeting. Communities can take action. What's it say there?
Get involved with Healthy Communities Tobacco Awareness Action Team, which is, we're not necessarily talking about tobacco again.
Exactly.
Incorporate e-cigarettes into smoke-free air policies. Pay attention to how e-cigarettes are marketed. And I don't really care how they're marketed. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be, directly marketing to kids or whatever. But, first of all, like you said, the confiscated vape pen is someone else's property. You should give it back. If we're talking about tobacco legislation, then we're talking about tobacco legislation. If we're talking about e-liquids, then if the e-liquids contain nicotine or tar, or the problems that cigarettes contain, then yes, those should be regulated in a similar way if they're going to be regulated. And I think there's a case for them not to be, but we can go into that rabbit hole another time if you like. But if it doesn't contain if you're talking about strawberry vapor, you know what I mean? That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And I get it. Fine. You don't want them to do it on school grounds? Fine. You don't want them to carry a vape pen into school? Fine. I get it. No problem.
Yeah.
But come on.
Yeah.
You don't even know. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So we don't need the city council to make some sweeping decision about stuff that they don't know about.
Exactly. Now you had a local angle thing too you wanted to bring in.
Well, I don't have much. It's just that when it comes to vaping, I think the people who tune into Barney and Clyde, most of them are people around this area, but some of you might not be. So we live in Columbus, Indiana, sort of the southern part of the state, southern central.
About 40 miles south of Indianapolis.
Yeah, about the same north of Louisville.
Right.
So Senator Ron Alting.
Okay.
That's the Republican state senator from the Lafayette area.
Okay.
He and some others have pushed some legislation to basically they made all e-liquids pass through a security check.
Okay.
And that was only provided by one firm, and apparently they had some types of ties to it. I don't know exactly what, but a federal court stepped in and overturned that.
Okay.
So that was unconstitutional and a conflict of interest for them to do that. So our state legislature has had a lot of freedom prohibiting moves, and that's one of them.
Okay. I just got to bring this up now because our old buddy Rashida Tlaib of the phrase "I won't allow," we were talking about. I won't allow people to work solely for wages or tips. Excuse me. Here's what she had to say about vaping. I won't allow this committee to be used by anybody to say that e-cigarettes and vaping and Juul, that's a brand of vaping device, aren't killing our people. She really, there's a lot of things she won't allow, aren't there?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean by killing our people?
Yeah. In reality, e-cigarettes, vaping, and Juul are significantly reducing the consumption of cigarettes and therefore saving lives. And now, at that same hearing, Jim Jordan a Republican from Ohio, said to Juul co-founder James Monsees, so you develop a product as a way to have an alternative to a more harmful traditional cigarettes and as a way to help people move off of traditional cigarettes and hopefully stop smoking altogether. Amazing product that has now got a 76% growth in market share. You employ 3,000 people. You made some decisions early on that you decided to change just to make sure young people like we have in this audience don't get access to your product, like stopping marketing on social media platforms and limiting a quantity that can be sold at retail outlets. You publicly come out and said that you don't think anyone should be using any tobacco products, including your own, until they're 21. And yet, for the record, all you get from this is to be dragged in front of Congress and yelled at by Democrats. A report from Citigroup, citing Nielsen data, said that sales of traditional cigarettes dropped by 6% in the first quarter of this year, and that it's impossible to say what has caused the change for sure, but most obvious case is Juul. People who conducted the study said. And the New York Times, in an article about this, quoted Tom Miller, the Attorney General of Ohio, who led the multi-state 1998 master settlement with tobacco companies. He said that the adult smoking rate has declined from 16.8% in 2014 to 13.9% in 2017. And Times also reports that the Bluetooth-equipped Juul might provide a way for adults to measure their nicotine use. Moreover, it might discourage teen use by disabling the device until it's in the presence of an adult buyer. Lots of things that can be done. Human ingenuity, once again, if you'll allow some human ingenuity to get to work. And Sally Satel of the American Enterprise Institute says that we should not let overheated worries about youth vaping obscure the massive potential benefits to the nation's 38 million cigarette smokers. Right. And now comes a study showing that the advent of vaping is associated with a remarkable decline in smoking among young people. This study by David Levy, a professor with Georgetown University, Lombardi Comprehensive Cancer Center, finds that the rate of decline in the use of cigarettes among students in the 10th through 12th grades tripled after e-cigarettes became more widespread in 2013. It also declined sharply among the entire population of those between the ages of 15 and 25. Past 30-day vaping among high school students increased from 1.5% in 2011 to 4.5% in 2013 and 13.4% in 2014. During this period, smoking rates dropped between 25 and 40%.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's clear.
The enemy of progress is perfection.
You bet. Yeah. And there's just this creepy little hint of a desire to control that we the overlords shall define for you what's acceptable fun or gratification or anything.
Man, I started smoking when I was about 14 years old.
Okay.
Right? I smoked cigarettes, and I smoked until I was about 26.
Okay.
And I quit because over that time, I had developed chronic health problems. You know what I mean? I absolutely, it was not my decision to quit. I could not smoke anymore.
Okay.
I was in bad shape, but I could have given myself cancer. You still could. I still could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You get that late in life. Sometimes it comes back up. But if this person is doing something that's clearly bad for them, you know what I mean? It's a kid, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe this thing is less harmful for them than cigarettes. It's cool now. Mm-hmm. Cigarettes aren't cool because that's what old people do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Vaping is cool.
Yeah.
You can do it without nicotine and without some of the bad stuff. No one's making the argument that it's healthy for you. Yeah. But maybe it offsets the damage that they did by however many years.
Yeah.
That gives them a longer window to quit and get their self together and quit. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not positive in every case.
Yeah.
But it's overall a benefit to people, and people trying to shut it down is just. And
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about our Senator Todd Young?
Brief me on this.
He tried to raise the smoking age. He's submitted legislation to raise the smoking age to 21.
Okay.
So, I mean, what do you think about that?
heavy-handed, unnecessary encroachment on freedom. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you must be for people getting a 3-year jump start on ruining their health. And
you know what'll ruin your health? Going to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And I don't think Mr. Young has any problem sending these kids to Afghanistan at 18 years old with an M16 in their hand.
Yeah. Can they please enjoy a pack of Marlboros when they're in their foxhole?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And they can vote for him.
Right.
Or not.
Yeah.
Right.
And speaking of Republicans who seem to have lost sight of the how freedom works, Josh Hawley, and I'm really surprised about this because Josh Hawley, you look into his background, he was a scholar with the Federalist Society and worked briefly for the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a hugely important organization defending Christian wedding service providers against being harassed for standing up for the conducting business according to their faith. But he's got that kind of stuff in his background. He's a history scholar, but he's now got this bill that he's deeply concerned about how addictive social media is, and the whole business of big tech and what are we going to do with it. There are some unprecedented things about big tech that are presenting scenarios in our society that we didn't have to deal with before. But
the Industrial Revolution was
like
unprecedented.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But here's from his
bill. The end
bill.
of slavery was unprecedented.
Sure, yeah. Oh, wow, we're not going to have human beings own each other anymore? How are we going to work this out?
Yeah, again, the Americans were the last ones to really adopt that. But,
here's from Hawley's social media addiction bill. It automatically limits the amount of time that a user may spend on these platforms across all devices to 30 minutes a day unless the user elects to adjust or remove the time limit. And if the user elects to increase or remove the time limit, resets the time limit to 30 minutes a day on the first day of every month. Displays a conspicuous pop-up to the user not less than once every 30 minutes that the user spends time on these platforms. I mean, this is the ultimate nanny state do-gooderism. Yeah, regardless of whether the user spends the 30 minutes on multiple devices, that shows how much time the user's been spending on those platforms that day.
This exists, okay? What this person is saying is that they want to force legislation that makes you opt out.
Yeah.
Opt out of these warnings. Mm-hmm. Whereas all the tech companies now provide an opt-in situation. You can go on your iPhone today and say, show me how much time I spend on any app.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can do the same thing on Google stuff. You may have to add an app or whatever.
Yeah.
You can do... It's 2019. You can do anything with software. You know what I mean? You can track your social media usage.
You bet.
You can opt in anytime you want.
Talk about an area in which the government does not need to be involved.
Yeah. We don't need this nanny state authoritarian telling us to get off of Facebook.
Yeah. How are we doing on time here?
We've got about 10 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Well, we'd probably better get to segment 3 then.
Yes.
You'll never be woke enough. This is one of our faves.
This is a good one.
And with intersectionality becoming ever more intricate, I'm in this demographic group, and I'm also in this one, and I'm also in this one. Therefore, I really qualify to express righteous indignation against, white straight male Christians or whatever.
My favorite thing about intersectionality, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my favorite thing about intersectionality is that they just keep whittling it down and down and down, and they don't realize that they're have to funnel all the way down to the individual, and they're just going to wind up at the Enlightenment.
Eventually.
400 years later, we're going to get right back to where we started.
Very good point. But a recent situation came along that pointed up current tensions between homosexuals, in particular lesbians, and transgender people. Mm-hmm. There's a lady named Miriam Ben Shalom, and she was the first person ever to be kicked out of the U.S. Army and then over being a lesbian and then reinstated.
Okay.
She took her case to court and
okay.
This
is not a transgender person. This is
no,
just a woman who identifies as a woman.
She has her romantic relationships and with other women.
Okay.
Yeah, and but she got banned from Facebook for 30 days. She said that lesbians like her are not interested in intercourse with males who have male anatomy. Yeah. And, this has already come up with parents saying, I don't want my little girl in a girl's restroom at school with some guy who all he has to do is declare he's a woman and he can lech at my daughter, And so this has already come up a little bit. But she's... Miriam Ben Shalom's been outspoken against transgender activists who, among other things, insist that males who identify as women are really women. That's mainly what this is geared at. If a guy pumps himself so full of hormones and has surgical mutilation performed on his crotch, then you might be talking about something different. But a whole lot of these guys out there still got their male equipment. They always have their male DNA, but that's a story for another day. But they still got their male equipment, and she says that. She's been pressured into having relationships with male transgenders, and I'm sorry, buddy, but you got male junk. I'm not interested.
Right.
Yeah. And
it's sort of like the one requirement of being a lesbian, right? Like if you're going
exactly.
I'm a lesbian, that you don't like the male anatomy.
Exactly.
Right?
By definition, you're interested in women that are women. Got the breasts and high pitched voices and no facial hair and all that.
You've been saying, I agree with this.
Yeah.
You've been saying for the last 50 years left that's not a choice.
You bet.
Right. Okay. So if that's not a choice, this person's disattraction to male anatomy.
Shall I do the honors on what her T-shirt said?
Yes, by all means.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
all right. The photograph that really tipped the balance for Facebook and got her banned for 30 days. It's a picture of two red T-shirts. She and a friend, I guess, are wearing these T-shirts. I haven't looked at it, but one says that dykes don't want dick, get over it, and another one that says women have vaginas, get over it. And she and a friend, I think, are sporting these T-shirts in a picture that was got her banned from Facebook.
But you can put a hat shaped like a pussy on your head and you're fine.
Yes. So, but I think Facebook's motivation was not, you're saying words that just make people blush.
Right.
That wasn't it. It was the fact that you're going to make transgenders irate.
Yeah, the group du jour that we're concerned about.
You bet.
Yeah, and I think the real victim here is the real transgender community. It's just like the whole pending race war that social media and traditional media too would have you believe exists.
Yeah.
You go online, you go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, and you just see all this fighting about race and all this stuff. And you would think that there was just this huge rift between people,
Yeah.
And then you go out into society and people are polite and nice and they say, yes, ma'am, and thank you, sir, and no, after you. You know what I mean? And people are mostly polite with each other. And the same way with the transgender community.
Absolutely.
Most of the people that I know who have, non-binary gender situations, they're not trying to shove it down your throat. They just want to live their lives.
Yeah.
They haven't, in some cases, they really haven't figured their own shit out yet.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to, navigate the world just like you and I are.
Yeah.
And they don't want any damn trouble. You know what I mean? But there you have a lot of people who I would say aren't really necessarily transgender. You have some who are clearly trans, who are activist provocateurs, right? I think there's a very small minority of people, and you have some people who are just the provocateur,
right?
And this is something that they can grapple onto, and a way that they can antagonize people, like the
And this goes even a step further. There's a guy out in British Columbia who has petitioned that province's province, is that the right word for a Canadian state? I think so. A guy out in British Columbia who has petitioned the British Columbian Human Rights Commission. Mm-hmm. I'm always the hair on the back of my neck stands up when I hear about any organization with the term human rights in its name. But
but that could alienate people because they go, wow, Barney, how could you? Don't you like human rights? It's like Fox News isn't fair and balanced. Antifa's not anti-fascist. You know what I mean? Right. Let's get on with our lives. Labels don't mean it is what it's inside the box.
But he's petitioned that body to make estheticians, people that do waxing, like bikini wax type stuff or facial hair waxing or whatever, treat him as a female who wants a wax job when he's still got all his equipment. And as this guy, I mean, this points out a subset of the transgender community that overall they might want to try to look at, because he's got a history of some lech type activity. He's gotten in some legal trouble for it, and some of his Facebook posts indicate that he's quite a lech. And
it seems to be just out for the antagonization.
A guy that wants some instant gratification, and it's very convenient for him to consider himself a woman for a few minutes to go downtown to a wax place.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the kind of stuff we're running into in this age of excruciatingly intricate intersectionality.
And I think that shows you, the things that our parents, have been saying all along is you give an inch and a mile's going to be taken. And I always kind of grew up a libertine, you know what I mean? And, my conservative parents just like, oh, no, you're just being fuddy-duddies and all that stuff.
Right.
And blow the doors off this stuff. And like, oh, you watch, they'll be giving hormone crap to kids, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You let gays get married, they'll be giving hormone crap to kids. And, they're not wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I certainly am not against gay marriage. I'm not against freedom of any kind. I think people should be able to do whatever they want to do in their lives as long as they're not hurting anybody else. But they weren't wrong that you give an inch and a mile is going to be taken. And somebody on Twitter or something put it pretty eloquently that we went from bake my cake to wax my balls real fast.
Yep. Yeah. And I saw that too, and that's about what this boils down to. Hey, well, listen, how are we doing here?
Oh, it's about time. 57.
Okay. Yeah. Plus, somebody's trying to get a hold of me by phone. Anyway,
it's very distracting, Barney.
It is.
You have to turn off your phone. Just kidding.
Clyde, keep them amused while I...
All right. I don't have anything to juggle. I'm going to juggle.
Okay. Okay.
Barney's got band practice coming up. So
my band, the Bodhi Coffle, has a practice tonight because we've got some really nice gigs coming up soon.
Is that the ball in Harry Potter?
No, Bodhi was the type of tree that Prince Gautama was sitting under when he achieved enlightenment and became the Buddha. And Coffle is an old term for a work gang, for a chain gang.
All right.
Bodhi Coffle. Our drummer came up with that.
As always, you've made me feel just slightly dumber than when I came in.
But anyway, we got a rehearsal, so I'm going to have to. But this is the Barney and Clyde podcast. Perhaps those who are viewing the first time can see what we were talking about. We got a libertarian perspective and a conservative perspective, and there's a lot of Venn diagram overlap. Sometime we ought to really find a nice, juicy foreign policy topic to discuss that would point up areas outside that.
I'm in. There are so many.
Okay. But anyway, you can see how this works. Our overlap is based on one point on which we strongly agree, and that's the primacy of freedom.
Yes.
Freedom is essential for human well-being. It's the one condition that's
individual
essential.
Freedom, free market economics. I think that's the biggest convergence in our Venn
And we do this fortnightly and forthrightly, and we always have, if we do it in the mornings or around noontime, we generally have some nice strong coffee. Cocktail hour, we have something with a little more pizzazz to it.
More bracing.
And please chime in under, if you're watching this on YouTube, chime in under that. If you're watching it on Facebook, chime in. Send us an email.
It's barneyandclydeshow@gmail.com. You can also go to patreon.com/barneyandclyde to support us.
You bet. We appreciate that.
In any amount possible.
Yeah.
And you can go to facebook.com/barneyandclydeshow too to comment and feel free to send us clips that you want us to.
Okay. And I do believe our last episode had the most views so far on Facebook.
Yeah, and the most engagement. Yeah. You had a lengthy conversation with some folks. So
thanks for all that. We like to hear. We like not just the we don't want to just preach to the choir. If you're a far leftist, take issue with something.
Yes. If that's the case and you have a question, a concern, a correction, send us not just an email. You can send us an audio clip, a video clip, whatever you want to. Let us know what you're thinking. Whether you're on our side, you're 100% against us, or you're somewhere in the middle, you think we missed some nuance. Whatever, send it to us. And,
Absolutely.
And we're going to do a mailbag episode really soon. There's been some emails. So I've had some really great email conversations with one person in particular, and I want to make sure that you have access to the email account so you can see all that stuff. But in the meantime, Barney, thank you for this beverage and for this chat, and stay free.
And until the next episode, stay free.